This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's episode of the Motor City Sports Rant is brought to you by The Athletic, premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Detroit Sports Podcast listeners can get 20% off the first year of an annual subscription by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. That's theathletic.com/DSP to subscribe to a great Detroit sports website and to save 20% off a yearly subscription.
Detroit is the greatest! Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnificent goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Motor City Sports Rant. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, welcoming you to another great week of podcasting here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Now, again, if you're listening and you're like, man, I don't really like the show when Doc is doing it alone, sorry to disappoint you, but it's me again by myself. Why do you ask? Probably because Jason's doing great things out there at the radio station that he's working at, or obviously I've had some takes or some opinions that he just hates, or he's been reading all the stupid questions I guess I've been asking on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, but for the better part now of 3 weeks, he hasn't shown up here. Where are you at, Jason? Why are you not here in the studio? Well, with that said, I got to give Jason credit for the fact that he's been doing this podcast for now, I think, 3 years. And so for the fact that he's a dedicated individual, I can understand the fact that he's busy. He's got things going on in other careers. And that's what I can respect about a guy like Jason, is that he's not just doing the podcast. He's not just doing radio. He's doing other things that he's got to do to make it for himself to try and get successful. So if you're listening to my voice and you're like, dude, you sound a little bit different, or you sound a little bit better, my wife is utterly hilarious in that she'll listen to the podcast from time to time. And she'll say, dude, your voice is too relaxing. You sound a little boring. You sound, like you can't do this all the time. And I say to myself, look, I know I'm not the kind of guy that likes to scream into the microphone. I'm not the kind of guy that gets passionate too often. But in the end, I do recognize that sometimes when I'm sick, when I'm coming off of a cold, I do actually sound a little bit better. My voice sounds a little bit deeper. It sounds a little bit like a radio host's real voice. And so I'm coming off of a cold. If you're listening going, dude, your voice sounds horrible. In my headphones, I'm listening and I'm going, man, I think I sound a little bit nasally. I was hoping Jason could come in here and pick me up a little bit. I've been talking so much. For those that don't know, as well as doing the Detroit Sports Podcast, I do a myriad of other things as well to satisfy my interests. And some things make a lot of money, some things make a little bit of money, but I'm not the kind of guy that just likes to do one thing. As you can tell, I do the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, I have a psychology practice, and I do a couple other things on the side that I'm passionate about. I'm sitting here doing the podcast, and I was hoping that I could kind of take it easy a little bit, because with the practice, I do a lot of talking in terms of working with the clients that seek out mental health help. But in the end, you got to do what you got to do, and I'm here stepping up for Jason and stepping up for the Motor City Sports Rant. For those of you that subscribe, all the new subscribers, all the people that listen to us and follow us and will text and tweet and say, hey, good job. I'm really liking the flow of the conversation. And actually, I'm kind of liking learning how to do a podcast by myself. I'm sitting here staring at a wall, but it's a good wall in that it's got our logo. It's got a couple great posters. It's got a banner. And so I look around and I go, wow, this is something neat that I created with my cousin Adam. And now it's taken the shape of a great podcast network. We're able to get credentials to cover things in town. And so I got to step it up. But I am coming off of a cold over this past weekend. And I was telling Jason, I was listening to the news report Sunday evening, 11 o'clock. And that's why I don't watch the news. I advise you, if you're listening to this, do not watch the news. Not because it's fake news. I'm not sitting here like Donald Trump saying, don't trust the media. It's fake news. I don't watch the news because it's all bad news. I don't watch the news because of the fact that when you watch it, I don't understand how you don't get your anxiety triggered or you don't get fearful. One of the stories that came on, and I'm a WXYZ guy for the most part. I watch the news. I watch the sports shows there. I also watch, if you want me to rank them, I watch Channel 7, 1, Fox 2, number 2, and Channel 4, a distant third, in that I'm not really a fan of what they do there at WDIV. And for some reason, I don't understand in that when we tried to reach out to them for anything, it's like we haven't been in existence. And the other two networks have shown at least a little bit of love. WDIV hasn't shown nothing, like we don't exist. So I don't know what they got going on over there at WDIV, but they don't show us love here at the Detroit Sports Podcast. And so in turn, I do not watch Channel 4 all that much. But speaking of the news, I watched WXYZ News on Sunday, and a story came out. It freaked me out, and it was talking about the flu. And I was telling Jason prior to him, not showing up to the studio, I said, look, I'm afraid of the flu because of WXYZ. They came out and said that this year's cycle of flu is the deadliest on record. Back 10 years ago, there was this whole swine flu epidemic, and a ton of people got sick, infected, and were sick. And this year's flu season is going off the rails. There's so many people getting infected with the flu. So many people are not only getting infected, suffering symptoms, but there are people who actually die from the flu. And I saw that report, and I started freaking out. I looked at my wife, and I said, dude, do I have the flu? She's like, no, dude, you don't have a fever, idiot. I check your temperature every day. Remember, it's 98.6. All you got is this nasally sounding thing going on. You got probably sinuses going on or whatever. You had a sore throat, you were congested and things like that, a little bit of a nasty cough. But for me, I'm a tough guy. I don't try and take a bunch of medicines. I just take cough drops. I just try to go about my business, drink a bunch of tea, take a bunch of vitamins and things like that. But I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't do anything to, I don't take Z-Packs. I don't do a whole bunch of things to try and deal with the flu. I just, tough it out. And that's what I think you're supposed to do. But in the end, I'm sitting here thinking maybe I should have gotten the shot, grown a set of balls, gone to a CVS or gone to my doctor and gotten a flu shot. But, I don't like that thought in my head of, the thinking that when you go out and get a flu shot, that you might get sick. And so I'm a guy that typically does not get sick too often, not to the point at least where I miss work or I miss podcasting. And I get lucky. It's that usually when I don't feel the best, it's over the weekend when I have some time to rest or not a lot of things to do. But I was hoping that Jason could carry this podcast, but he's not here. But I'm seriously freaked out by this flu. Thank you, WXYZ. I'm freaked out. I don't want to die from the flu. Well, luckily, you don't have to worry out there. I don't have it. I didn't have a fever. I just had a cough. And as you can see, I'm dealing with the ramifications of a sore throat that I had. But I'm here. I'm willing to do what I got to do for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm ready to kick off another great week of podcasting. We got a lot to talk about this week. For those of you that are new, you can subscribe on iTunes. We put out content basically from Tuesday to Saturday, fresh content each and every day, similar shows with similar hosts, day in, day out. You can find the same shows on the same day. We don't try and confuse people. We don't change up all the hosts all the time. It's the same shows that air on the same days, and it goes from Tuesday to Saturday, and we do the best that we can to put out great Detroit sports content. And you can get all the information on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, or our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. But I want to start this podcast off with a great question. I mean, we were prepping, Jason and I, via text and things like that. And for those of you that are curious as to how I prep, typically I just go through and check the Detroit News, the Free Press, USA Today, TMZ, E-Online, outlets that provide us with some topics that we can talk about in the world of sports, entertainment, and things like that. But sometimes I trust you guys out there that follow me on Twitter at Detroit Podcast for some content. And an individual messaged us earlier on Monday, and he came up with a great question. At Motomania81 tweeted us. He tweeted at Detroit Podcast, and he asked, is it okay because I'm contemplating going to Nashville to watch the Red Wings play the Predators? He asked, and he wanted us to retweet it to the masses, to our well over 40,000 followers. He wanted this question answered. He said, is it okay because it doesn't look like I have anybody to go with? Is it okay to attend a sporting event by yourself? In this day and age, I want to answer that question for you. For me personally, I don't typically go to sporting events by myself. What I do is I typically am in favor of, if you want to go see a movie, if you want to have a cup of coffee, you want to grab a bite to eat, you can go out there and do some things by yourself. It's okay. A lot of people are a little bit freaked out by doing things by themselves. They feel a little bit dorky, or they feel like nobody respects them, or they feel like a little bit lonely, or they feel like they can't go out there and do things by themselves. Screw that. Go out there. Have a good time. But in terms of sporting events where there's a lot of people, well over 15,000 people that might be going out there to a hockey game, the Red Wings and the Predators, I would suggest maybe not going and doing that. Because in this day and age, when you go out there, what are you going to do? You're going to sit by yourself and just take in a game? I would say no. I would advise you, no. You're going to go out to Nashville, go out to a bar, enjoy yourself. You could probably save so much money by just going to a bar and having a cocktail. You go up to the bar, order a couple drinks, and enjoy the game at a Nashville bar. I truly think you'll go out and have a better time watching at a bar than dropping that money on a ticket to watch a game by yourself. And the reason is that in a bar setting, I think it's a little bit more intimate. I do think that potentially if you're a Wings fan, you might not find that many people that are going to be in favor of you if you're donning a Red Wings jersey at the game. Maybe at a bar, maybe if you want to go indiscreetly and you just want to watch the game, be a little bit indiscreet, because I'm a guy that doesn't wear my jersey supporting my team on the road. I don't typically go to a lot of games on the road, and I definitely am not going to wear a Red Wings jersey in Nashville or anywhere. Not because I don't support the team, but because I don't want to deal with idiots who want to make comments or say things. And especially, in places like Philadelphia, California, Oakland, you don't want to go to places and put yourself in danger. So I'm indiscreet, wear a regular hat, go to a bar, and support your team. And don't act like a fool. Don't be cheering loudly if you're the only one in a bar supporting a team. Just go there, enjoy the game, and have a good time. But I hope that you enjoy your experience out there. My opinion is, do not go out there and watch a sporting event at an arena by yourself, because people are going to be looking at you funny. You might have an extra set of eyes on you. You might be considered an easy target. I think that it's okay to go to a bar instead and watch something by yourself. And I've done that plenty of times now that I got a friend, a close family friend that owns a bar. It's great to just kind of go up there, sit at the bar, and watch the game quietly. If you're indiscreet and you're quiet, you can just go out there, have a good old time, have a drink, talk to the owner, talk to the bartender. Bartenders are really friendly. Here's a tip. If you're somebody out there that's new to going to bars, you go, you sit down, and you tip the bartender well, because then they treat you better the next time you go. And I've realized the more you tip, the better people treat you. And so going to the bars around town, you develop relationships with people, you develop relationships with bartenders, and you slip them that extra $5 or $10, and they'll remember you. They'll give you good quality drinks. They'll take care of you. They might even give you free shots. So if you take care of the bartenders, they'll take care of you. So it's my opinion at MotoMania81 that you do not go to the game. You do not go see the Red Wings and the Predators on the road in Nashville. Go out there, enjoy your time, go have a drink, go to a bar, and enjoy yourself. But if you ask me, Doc from the Detroit Sports Podcast, is it okay to go to a sporting event by yourself? My answer is no. My answer is that you should definitely enjoy things by yourself. You don't have to feel pressure to do things all the time with people. But in terms of a sporting event, I think it's a little bit weird when someone shows up, sits by themselves at a sporting event, especially in this day and age. You might have an extra set of eyes on you. You don't want to be looked at like that, like the crazy person sitting by himself at a sporting event. And the reason is there's so many extra people there that you might be the subject of being judged. And I don't like that feeling. So my counsel is, do not go. Go to a bar in Nashville. Do a bunch of other things. I mean, I haven't been to a game in Nashville, but I'm almost certain there's a bunch of better things you can do right there. So feel free anytime, guys, if you're listening, message us, reply, visit our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, the most interactive Detroit sports Twitter page out there. Now, I want to switch gears and talk about Matt Patricia, the Detroit Lions, because some developments have occurred over the course of the last 5 days that are really interesting, that have piqued my attention. Now, the Indianapolis Colts have found their man. They found a dude to actually go out there and sign on the dotted line in Frank Reich, the former offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, former Lions backup quarterback, played a little bit with the Lions, played with the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the game that Frank Reich is most remembered for is the game that's been dubbed the comeback. It was an NFL playoff game between two former AFC Conference Eastern Division rivals, between the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Oilers. I believe Jim Kelly went down with a knee injury, and the Bills were down 32 points, and Frank Reich had to come in there, and he had to do some things. He brought that Bills team back to win in overtime, 41-38, and as of this recording, it still remains the largest comeback in NFL history. And Frank Reich is a quarterback that's done some things. He's got a lot of experience, has been around a bunch of winning quarterbacks, and has been around a lot of winning organizations. And recently he served as the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, the Eagles team that featured Carson Wentz and Nick Foles, who balled out in the playoffs. Carson Wentz, a very highly selected NFL draft pick, and an individual that was emerging and flourishing, largely in part due to some great head coaching from Doug Peterson and the offensive coordinator, Frank Reich. Well, when Josh McDaniels decided to spurn the Indianapolis Colts, they turned to Frank Reich, and maybe, just maybe, might have been a saving grace that Josh McDaniels said, screw it, I'm going to stick with the New England Patriots. Frank Reich's going to go over there to Indianapolis. He's going to try and resurrect that program. And hopefully the quarterback with the caliber of an Andrew Luck can overcome his injuries. They can start to develop an increased talent, fix that offensive line, get a running back to help out Andrew Luck and support him to help that organization get over the hump. So I'm fascinated with what Indianapolis is doing. I'm fascinated with what the Houston Texans are doing, but I'm really, really fascinated with the contract of Jimmy Garoppolo. And people will sit here and they'll listen to this and they'll say, dude, I follow you on Twitter. I recognize that you're always kind of planting the seeds of doubt in the home quarterback and Matthew Stafford. You're not a Stafford guy. You're one of the Stafford haters. Look, I'm not a Stafford hater. I'm just a guy that says it's okay to have the conversation regarding whether or not you think Stafford's the right guy. And people right away, when Jimmy Garoppolo was signed, were starting to say, look, see, Stafford's not the highest paid anymore. Look, see, that value is fine for Matthew Stafford. No, I say to myself, look, I'm not coming from the angle of, do I think Matthew Stafford should be the highest paid player? Obviously, I thought no, but I say, is he even worth $27 million? And I would say no. And people kind of poo-pooed me and said, you know, this day and age, you need a quarterback. You got to pay him that well. Well, I'm of the opinion you pay somebody for what they've done and what you think they can do. With $27 million on the books per season, and at the time you made him the highest paid player, that makes the expectation for Stafford and the Lions to go out there and win not just one Super Bowl, but maybe even a couple. I know people will say, and they'll come back and shoot back and tweet back, and they'll defend and say, you know, it's a team game. Yeah, well, in a team game, when your quarterback is taking that much of the cap, then you have to kind of decide, are you going to build a great team or are you going to have a great quarterback? And people have started to investigate whether you can do that. Not a lot of teams are able to have that $27 million quarterback, pay him that much, and then build a team around him. So that's why I'm a little bit critical. And that's why it's fascinating when the Jimmy Garoppolo contract was signed, people started then to further validate Stafford's contract. Okay, fine. You have your franchise quarterback. You have your quarterback who's not a bust. But do you have your quarterback that can actually get you to the postseason more often than not and get you to some significant playoff wins? And so at this point in time, he's got as many playoff wins as I do. Nothing. He's got no track record in the postseason. And then you look at it and you start to compare. Okay, now there's going to be some heavy comparisons going on between the Lions, the Colts, and the Houston Texans. And I can't wait until the 2018 NFL season because I'm going to be peeking into the Lions. I'm not taking a B team. I will never, ever support another team, unlike everyone else that jumps off the bandwagon. I'm always going to be a Detroit guy. You will not see the Doc representing the Yankees or other teams or bouncing off the bandwagon. No, I'm going to be critical of my teams, but I will start to pay attention to other teams as much as I do the Lions. And the three teams I just mentioned are the teams I will be paying attention to. I'll be paying attention to the Colts and their rebuild under Frank Reich and what they're doing with Andrew Luck. I'll be paying attention to Mike Vrabel and what the Texans are doing. Can Deshaun Watson come back? Is Mike Vrabel going to do some things for that defense and get them over the hump? And I'm specifically going to be looking forward to and really going to get excited when the Lions play the San Francisco 49ers because hopefully by then it'll be two teams playing well and coming into that game with a lot of heat and a lot of momentum so that we can have some things to talk about. I'm always about talking about great content and great stories here on the podcast. It makes it fun. But when the Lions play the San Francisco 49ers, hopefully both teams have decent records. You're going to have the great storyline of Matthew Stafford v. Jimmy Garoppolo. So earlier on Monday, on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, I threw out a tweet and said, look, who do you think will have the better statistical year in 2018? Jimmy Garoppolo of the San Francisco 49ers or Matthew Stafford of the Detroit Lions? Okay, And so a couple responses obviously were for the home team. They supported Stafford. They said, look, go with the guy that's been proven. Go with the guy that's had the top statistical seasons. Go with the guy that's done some great things across numerous years. And go with the guy that likely is going to have the better season. Go with Matthew Stafford. And that's fine. I can respect that if that's what you want to reply back. The responses I don't like and I don't get are the responses of people asking, and a lot of times people will tweet that to me when I ask questions or put out polls or things like that. They'll ask and they'll say, is this a real question? Is this a real debate? Well, yes, it's a real question because I asked it, and so I'm asking these questions because people are thinking it. Because when you got right now, as this recording, the top two paid quarterbacks are Jimmy Garoppolo and Matthew Stafford. Logistically, you should start to want to compare them. Who's going to have a better year? Who's going to be the better quarterback? Which team's going to be in the postseason first? Which team, the 49ers in San Francisco or the Lions of Detroit, is going to have a better 2018 season? Which team's stock is way up? Which team's stock is way down? How can you ask, is that a legit question? And some people will kind of ask that, and I say to myself, why would you even ask that? Because I built this Twitter following based upon questions, based upon speculation, based upon reacting to games, and based upon these things. So how are you going to ask me if that's a real question or not? Yes, it's a real question. And then to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight, when I tag somebody else, it's because it's a paid sponsorship. So yeah, it's a valid question. I'm getting paid to do it. So I don't like that. I mean, I don't want to censor anybody if you want to question me, but it really pisses me off to read that, because if I'm asking it, it's because I'm probably somebody that's a regular fan that's going to be asking these things. And so if you want to take the high road all the time and be like, why are you asking this? Why are you asking that? That doesn't make sports any fun. The fun of sports is debating. The fun of sports is saying, what is likely to happen between these two teams? Who's better? Who deserves their contract? Maybe you should take a page out of my book and start asking some questions that might be even considered ridiculous. Maybe you'll grow your following, because then people will see that you're invested, that you care, that you throw out ideas, and that you're not just some robot that just is bored with sports and just will be like, oh, we got to wait and see. No, we don't got to wait and see. I can debate the question right now. And my thinking is right now that Jimmy Garoppolo in 2018 is going to have the bigger year. I think he's going to throw for more yards. I think he'll have more touchdowns. He'll end the year with more wins. And my thinking is, because of the fact now the Lions have a defensive coach, the Lions might be, in a situation where, what do you think their number one need is? What is everybody talking about? The number one need is, for the Detroit Lions, a running back. Don't you think that a guy with my caliber brain might think that, the Lions are going to go out there, draft a running back, and then they're going to throw the ball 50 times more? No. The reason why people want the Lions to go out there and secure that running back is to finally get that balance on offense, which means they don't want Stafford throwing the ball that many times. You get it? It's not winning football. It hasn't helped the Detroit Lions. So if you're not able to kind of extend that thought out a little bit, my thinking is not because, what everyone thinks is that Doc thinks Stafford sucks and that he can't produce. My thinking is that right now, Jimmy Garoppolo's the hot toy. Jimmy Garoppolo's the guy that everybody's talking about. Jimmy Garoppolo's the quarterback of the 49ers, and people are looking at him like the savior of the organization. And right now, Stafford, he's been there and done that. He's had the 5,000 yards passing. He's, padded his stats for years. And so what are the Lions looking to do? The Lions are looking to take that next step. They're looking to get to the postseason more consistently. They're looking to build an organization. And so with that, they're looking to get that franchise running back. They're looking to improve the offensive line. I believe that Stafford's numbers are going to go down. I think that for the Lions to be better, Stafford needs to throw the ball less. That's the proper way to go. So I truly do not believe Matt Patricia, Jim Bob Cooter are going to put together a game plan where Matthew Stafford throws the ball significantly more in 2018 than he did in 2017. So there's one reason for my argument that Jimmy Garoppolo will have better stats. Two, I do think that Jimmy Garoppolo has something. People will say that, this dude, we don't have enough of a sample size to judge him. Dude has learned under the best. You think he went out there to New England and just watched Tom Brady and stuck his head in the sand, didn't learn anything? When you're around greatness, it can rub off on you. You go over there to San Francisco in 2017 after that trade, and people were waiting. People were just waiting for Jimmy Garoppolo to get on the field just so they could have something to talk about. just so they could have something to chomp their teeth on, something to write about. And he goes out there, the first game he was there, he didn't play. He started 5 games, and in 5 games went 5-0, racked up 7 touchdowns and 1,500 yards. And he brought some life to that organization. He brought some life to that franchise. People started to take notice. Look at what Jimmy Garoppolo is doing out there. And so I do believe he's the next big thing. I think he's a stud. I think he's got more talent than Matthew Stafford. Obviously, I think that many organizations can do a lot better job than the Lions with talent management and things like that. So I'm a skeptic. Obviously, everyone knows I'm a Lions skeptic. I root and pray for them each and every year. My hopes get high in August, and then in September, you realize, oh boy, it's the same old Lions. And so you'll see me ride the roller coaster each and every year where I'm hopeful, I'm excited the first couple games, and then the Lions go Lions and start making all their mistakes. But I'm high on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's going to have a massively successful career, and I just can't wait to see the Lions take on the 49ers. I want to see Stafford man up. Hopefully it's a game between two teams that are above 500 and playing well. I hope that it's an opportunity for Matthew Stafford to go out there and prove himself because people are going to be watching what does Stafford do versus Garoppolo. Right or wrong, people will say, look, football is a team game, but in the end, everybody judges the quarterback. Everybody watches the biggest position. That's why that's the position that's paid the highest, typically on football teams. Now, you can argue whether or not that's the case, whether or not you should do that as an organization. I'm one to say, look, you don't need to pay your quarterback that much money if you can successfully build a defense, build an offensive line, defensive line. If you can build a team from the trenches outward, then you don't need that massively paid quarterback to do the job. You can get a quarterback that's getting paid similar to what Nick Foles was getting paid. If you surround him with great talent, then you're able to do some things. So I'm super excited. I can't wait to see Jimmy Garoppolo play Matthew Stafford. It'll be a great game. And so for those of you that are thinking that I'm a Stafford hater, he deserves to lead a team. He is one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the league, no question. But now, among the top 15, where does Stafford rank? Where do you put him? People are automatically assuming that when the Lions get the running back, when they build the offensive line, when everything is in place, that everything will fall into place for Matthew Stafford. That's yet to be seen because, first and foremost, the Lions did have an unbelievable defense, a couple years back. They finished, I believe, as the number 2 overall defense, and you weren't able to get that playoff win then. How close of a perfect football team do the Lions have to build in order to get some success? That's yet to be seen. That's Bob Quinn's job. That's his job to go out there and build a team that can go out there and have success. But how many perfect pieces do you need for Matthew Stafford to have success? Because let's just say you go out there and you get a Saquon Barkley. Let's say you go out there and you get the next big running back. You get an individual in the later round that's talented. Let's say he goes down with an injury. Let's say the game plan then is from the opposition. Another great defensive coordinator. Let's say it's Detroit and Philly next year in the playoffs. You don't think Jim Schwartz is going to come up with a plan to try and stop the Lions' running game? The game plan would be simple then. You line up 8 in the box and you make Stafford beat you. Similar to what happened in 2017. Okay, you guys got to remember, don't be basic in your thinking, okay? Because of the fact that, you could get that great running back, but you don't think great defensive coordinators can limit you or try and stop you, and you got to overcome that. You got to basically go out and get the baddest of the baddest running back to overcome that. Defenses are smart, and wrapping this up regarding the Lions, you may be looking at Matthew Stafford taking a step back statistically when you try and go get that running back, because I do believe they want more balance. They want Matthew Stafford to hand the ball off more. And so that's why Bob Quinn's job is to go out there and get an offensive line and build it properly so that when an opposing defense tries to stop you, tries to stop the run, you are able to do it and overcome it and able to execute. So I'm super excited. I can't not wait until the Lions play the San Francisco 49ers. And as this podcast comes to an end, I can hear my voice in my headphones. My voice is fading. I'm still talking too much. My goodness, Jason, see what you've done? You basically potentially have ruined my voice for the entire week, a big week here on the network. But I got one more thought before I get out of here. Okay, my final parting shot is regarding this whole notion now, the notion of ranking college teams, football and basketball and things like that. Even wrestling now has done it by putting out power rankings to spur discussion. And so people will ask, okay, why are you so upset regarding the NCAA coming out with a show in terms of their discussion? They started to put out some, content that discusses, hey, let's say we were to seed the teams now, the top 4 teams in every region, what would it look like? And the first one debuted over the weekend, and it was atrocious. I mean, you had number 1 seeds across the board that had a terrible weekend that had lost. Villanova, Virginia. Are you kidding me? Those teams came away with losses in recent games. Virginia, number 1 seed. Villanova. Of course they're good teams overall, but how do you have Michigan State ranked 11th in a 3 seed after a win versus Purdue? Michigan State at home was the number 4 team ranked in the country. They played the number 3 team ranked in the country, Purdue. So when a poll like that comes out and you don't have the Spartans at number 1 or at worst a number 2 seed, it's ridiculous. I don't get why Michigan State's seeding fell after a top-notch victory. Why are they seeded so low? And these are the people that are responsible for creating the bracket? Come on now. I was going to ask Jason, how much stock did he take in it? How much should we invest in these content-driven programs? And from now on, I'll look at it, but I will no longer give my energy to it because it is what it is. It's content driven. It's just to, have podcasters and people like me who are geeks about these kind of things talk about it, but I will no longer get mad. I was upset, honestly, that Michigan State was ranked 11th. You kidding me right now? That's atrocious. But I will take a little bit of solace and I will scale it back a little bit and just say that, you know what? It doesn't mean anything. It's just for discussion. It's just for debate. That's the whole purpose of why they do it. So I understand it. Okay. But I won't get emotional about these polls any longer. But when the time comes and it's time to actually put out the bracket and the selection committee decides what they need to do, I hope they figure out that Michigan State likely should be a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed at worst. I do think with Miles Bridges and what Michigan State is going to be capable of achieving in the postseason Big Ten tournament and what they're likely able to do, I think that they will garner the respect that they deserve. But yeah, I won't give, after this podcast, I won't give these content-driven shows, these power ranking shows, that much energy anymore. All right, with that, my voice is shot. I've screamed my head off for far too long. I have to get out of here. I have to eject. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I greatly appreciate your support. You can find us on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can find this podcast as well as all the others on this network anywhere you can find podcasts. Podbay, Feedburner, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, iTunes, Stitcher. We greatly appreciate your support. Hopefully Jason finds his way back to the studio next week. I've missed him. We'll find you guys again next week. Thank you for hitting the download button. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay, nice, idiot. F you. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.